Okay. If we want to show roles, you'll see these are the roles that we have defined. We have the admin role. You see all the permissions or scopes are assigned to the admin role. And if we flip through it, you'll see migrator and kind of everything else. And then the permissions endpoint is the global set of permissions that are primarily there so that when the UI wants to like manage like user defined roles, and we can at some point it gives it the set of the catalog of permissions. So probably the next thing to do is to show you. So the other part of the demo here is that I have deployed. I've hacked the UI to use OIDC directly and not to use Keycloak. The Keycloak libraries are using OIDC under the covers, so I don't know that it's a big change, but anyway. Let me go and do, let's see, tackle UI. And what you'll see here is that rather than having all the stuff defined for Keycloak, there are these environment variables, and you'll see that the OIDC server URL is, so this F35 at Red Hat is just my local server, and it has the hub running on 8080, and you'll see that the hub implements all the standard OIDC protocol endpoints, and they're all based off of the hub, basically the main URL/OIDC. Okay, so what the UI is doing is the UI, rather than hitting Keycloak's endpoints, is hitting all the OIDC endpoints on the hub. So probably the next thing to show you is the fun part, which is so if I go in and I go into my localhost 8080, the UI is now, instead of authenticating through Keycloak, it's authenticating through the hub. And I just whipped up this simple little canned login page, and you'll notice I have an admin user. And so if I go in and admin, then we come in and we are an admin. And because we're an admin because we have both of these perspectives, and I won't really get into kind of everything, but you'll see that, effectively everything works the way it did before. Okay. One thing to kind of mention is just for testing is that, and to test the refresh flow, is that the token that the UI is getting is good for 10 seconds, and it will refresh for up to like 2 minutes. And so I wanted to make sure that I could very quickly kind of go through that. So behind the scenes, the UI is refreshing the token through the normal OIDC process. So what I'm going to do too is, so what I'll also do is go in and I will show you, no, I can show you the grants. I could list the grants and things, but it's not really all that interesting. But what we're going to do is we're going to log out now. And I want to show off the OIDC Federation. And so by defining to the hub that there's an external OIDC provider, that it is to be federating or delegating the OIDC authentication to, what you'll see is this extra button. And this extra button, whether we want to have it in the long term or not, I don't know, but this is exactly like any other app you've ever used, where you say, I want to log in with Apple, or I want to log in with my Google account. And this is all working exactly the same way. And so if I type in my user ID of admin, we say we want to do this, we click on this, we are now redirected. We are now looking at the second hub. We'll just call it our external OIDC provider. We are being redirected there, and we are now authenticating with that. So the local hub knows nothing about any of this, except for, in other words, it never sees the username and password like you'd expect. Okay, so now we've authenticated to the external OIDC provider, and imagine that's Keycloak or Google or anything. It doesn't really matter. And you'll see, because I'm an admin, I've gone in here and I have all the different perspectives. But if I log out again and I log in, I've created a second user that is in the external provider that's not in the local hub. And so I created a local account for me. And in the local account for me, I am a migrator. And so you'll see that as a migrator, I don't get the admin pages. And you'll see that just so you know that it's live. Is I'm user Jortel. Okay, so and I can show you that because if we go to this other provider, and remember when we looked at our users before, there was one, and I look up users, there is a Jortel user that's a migrator. I think that might be everything I had to show you. Are there any questions before I stop sharing?
Yeah, could you just maybe explain the upgrade plan in brief? Because I had just
yeah.
lot of questions.
Actually, one of the things sorry, I did have one more thing to show you, and that is that in the case like where I'm using my UI, I mean my using the API, is that is that also there's an implementation of the personal access tokens or API keys, whichever you want to call it. And so if I do a login, and by default, it's just gonna be admin, so we'll just not worry about that. But anyway, is that what you'll see is here is I get this, I'm getting a personal access token, and this is just an opaque token. And so if I say, sorry, if I do this now, and I say hub users, then you'll see I can see the users, right? But if I log in as Jortel, then I'm going to get a different token. And now if I try to see users, I get a 401 because Jortel is a migrator. I can't see users. So just want to kind of show that off a little bit. Yeah, let me stop sharing here. Okay. So I did update the enhancement with the upgrade plan, and my thinking here is that users, when they upgrade from this and they're already using KeyCloak, I think they ought to be they by default, the operator will just reconfigure the hub to federate the OIDC to their existing KeyCloak. It's really their choice as to whether or not they want to not use KeyCloak anymore. We could probably have a flag that says whether or not you want the operator to do that, or whether you want the operator to essentially uninstall the KeyCloak that's there. But I'm reluctant to have an option in the upgrade to say migrate like all the users, and the reason being is that we can't migrate the passwords anyway. And so what I'm thinking is that when we do the upgrade, they will just be using the KeyCloak as they are today. When they want to get off of KeyCloak, what they'll have is the opportunity to say, when I log in as user Jeff, then I'll have the option to say to import that remote user into the local tackle inventory, and then it becomes a local user, and then they can log in locally. And then as all their users go through that process, and again, when they do that, they'll have to reset their password, because again, we don't know what it is, right? So as they import it, they'll set their password. Once they've migrated all their users out of KeyCloak, now they're free to just get rid of KeyCloak.
Well, maybe more specifically, instead of maybe to not boil the ocean, like let's not assume there's a bunch of people that actually want to migrate they want to migrate out of KeyCloak into the hub as an OIDC provider.
Right.
I think the more likely scenario is someone already has KeyCloak, they don't want to change anything. Like maybe can we stop at that support layer, which is like, hey, we're going to support when you upgrade from 09 to 010, there will be some logic in the operator to set that server URL properly, so that it'll just keep using KeyCloak and it'll be like nothing changed for them. But we don't actually support migrating like out of KeyCloak.
Well, that's what I said initially. Is it
Okay.
on the 0.10 upgrade, the operator will just reconfigure. It will reconfigure the UI to look at the hub. It will reconfigure the hub to use the key cloak that they already have defined, right, as the external IDP. And when that happens, everything will effectively work just the way it does today.
That's perfect. Yeah.
We said the same thing, right?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, that's
okay. Awesome. But my thinking is that we're going to want to. I think providing a path for them to migrate out of Keycloak would be good. And of course, for new installations, we won't even offer. I mean, we would still offer a way to say on a new install that I want to use this external IDP because it could be likely it would be their corporate SSO, but out of the box, we won't be installing Keycloak and we won't be managing the realm in Keycloak anymore, whether it's theirs or ours or anything. And which is a good, I think, which ought to be, well, anyway, it's, yeah, well, there's some questions to be answered there long term because I think ideally we would go to people and say, if you want to use your external Keycloak, that's fine, but go into Keycloak and define roles, like say create users and assign them roles, but relieve them of the burden of saying that they also need to know, like put all the scopes and like build the roles, because that's really something better to be managed within, I think, Tackle. Does that make sense?
Definitely.
Yeah, makes sense to me.
I'm curious, Scott, what questions do you have? Because I know like this puts some work onto the, providers having the full provider support and making the UI look the same and integrate. How does all that look to you right now?
It looks not too bad. I don't have a good feel for the scope of the work and where it would need to be, where it needs to live. That's the thing there. But I can hope us to chat with Jeff about where that stuff is being hosted and how it gets deployed, and see how that can all integrate together.
Yeah, and what I did to the UI to make this work is absolute hackery and is not intended to ever be a substitute for Scott doing it right.
Yeah, I mean, the client library side stuff, there's the simple way that Jeff did it, and then there's the make it work consistently through the whole UI and solid checks everywhere. So that's extra stuff that'll be going on in that enhancement. But yeah, it's just slight unknown for the login page and any UI management stuff on web. And to mention this, where does that actually, where does the code for that actually live? And how do we manage it going forward? So just some stuff like that. It's nothing too crazy, just some extra work to look at.
Yeah. And to be clear, I don't even know what I did because I had Claude go do it and I don't know what it butchered. It just made it work. I was like, okay.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah. So I think we were talking, I know I was talking to Fabian a little bit, and I think in terms of the way that the LLM proxy works today is it will probably put it behind the hub the way that it reverse proxies to other internal services so that it will do the RBAC. Then in that case, not giving it a JWT, but instead giving it a personal access token, an opaque token, will be fine because we'll disable the auth in it. It won't need to. And the same thing we do with the solution server is that it doesn't do its own auth either. So I think that would be the plan there. As far as like Contra and other tools, is that we will be converting them to work with the personal access token rather than the access token that requires the routine refresh and things like that. And there's a few details to iron out there, but I think that's what will happen. Also, just to be consistent, the proof of concept migrates the hub off of those tokens as well. And so the hub will be configured with an access key, an API key or / access token as well. I also, in doing this, made the ownership of the tie of the access token to be directly to the applicable to a user or to an IDP identity or the task. And the important thing there is that it kind of promotes the authentication of the token against a task that we give add-ons to. Like currently the way it works today is it gets a token, but the token basically just doesn't get authenticated if the task isn't running. So it's only good for the life of the task. Anyway, make a long story short, the same authentication and revocation mechanism works the same way for add-ons as it does for anything else. So that's kind of all I had. I did have a question to bring up, but I don't want to hog too much of the meeting right now. So if we want to circle back to it, that's fine.
What is it?
But yeah, that was fun.
Okay, so one of the things that we were doing is we were so there are several different OIDC grant types. Okay, and one of the basically there's the user authentication grant. Or technically it's an access code grant. And then the other is that you can do a client credential grant, which is what is kind of basically you authenticate to the client, or you are the client, then you get the grant. And then in the case of, and so that one doesn't require essentially the callback to collect username and password. There's a third kind that was introduced in OAuth 1 that's called a password grant. And that's a nickname for the long acronym that it is. But basically the password grant is where you go to the token endpoint and you specify that you want the grant based on a password and or authenticated by the password, as opposed to what's supposed to happen, which is you ask for the user access grant and you go into the callback flow to where it's asking for the password. So in other words, the OIDC protocol is designed such that you're never like passing the password. You're always being asked for the password. And so as of OIDC or OAuth 2.0, doing password grants, like essentially saying I have a username and a password, go give me a token right away. That flow has been deprecated. And according to the RFC, it's highly discouraged. And so, and because of that, all of the OIDC providers have deprecated it. And it's one of those things where you can't count on it. You can't count on it, and the RFC says you must not do it. So, but for backwards compatibility, things like Keycloak still do it. And the reason why that's important is because anything we do today, where we go and you say, you go to the hub and say, here's my username and password, give me an auth token, right? We really shouldn't be doing that anymore. And so the reason I'm bringing it up is because so far in what I've implemented, it doesn't do that. But here's where things get a little bit tricky, and that is the way the personal access tokens work or and so forth. Okay. So imagine that you go to the hub and you say, give me an access token. Well, if you're a local user, it's very easy to give you, a personal, PAT. So if I give you a PAT, it's easy for me when you use the PAT to go to the local password and user inventory and decide what you can do. Because remember, it's an opaque token. It doesn't say what you can do. It just says who you are, right? That's the design of that sort of thing. Same with an API key, right? So the problem is that if you're a federated user, in other words, the user actually, user Jortel exists in this key cloak, right? And the only time that the local hub even knows, or that the hub even knows that it exists, is that for that remote user, we create a local temporary IDP identity that says that I know who you are, and that's the local provider doing that. And so in effect, the the hub as an IDP provider, in the case where it's delegated that to somebody to another provider, just doesn't know who you are, and it doesn't care. So my point being is that when you're dealing with an access with a PAT, and you in the case where the authentication was federated to delegated to something like Keycloak, the roles or permissions that you have just isn't known then. It's only known when you're given the key, when you're granted the key. And so what that means is that that it suggests that the correct flow for this would be much more like what GitHub does. And that is, you authenticate to GitHub, right? The normal way. You go into GitHub and you create a personal access token. Now I have a token that I can use like longer term, and I obtained it by authenticating through the normal mechanism. Okay. And what I'm wondering is that rather than having Contra go to the hub essentially and say, give me an API key, because again, if we do it that way, the hub doesn't know who you are yet, because you have never authenticated through the normal channel. Does that make sense?
I assume we have to authenticate with the normal credentials before we can generate that key, right? Like in Contra, whatever, you provide a username, password, and then it would use those credentials to provision a key for that user and then pull it down and use that.
Well, see, that's the thing, is that the problem is that the normal the OAuth authorization flow, unless we're going to do a client credential grant, which means you have to create a client for every single user, right? And again, you'd have to do this in the remote Keycloak. Keycloak would have to have a client for each one of those, right? As opposed to what you do today, because the way it works today through the UI, so the UI can obtain the token because the UI has the mechanism as an OIDC client to get the callback and to just basically display the page. And again, when you enter your username and password, you're giving it to Keycloak, not the hub, right? And so when that happens, now the UI actually has a token. It is authenticated, and now it can actually go to the hub and say, give me an API key for this, right? Mm-hmm. But in the case of, say, Contra can't obtain an actual access token that way, because it would have to support the OIDC like callback to where it would have to prompt the user for the username and password again, in a way that the whole thing is designed such that Contra never sees the password, right?
Scott, you got your hand up?
Yeah, that's the same. We're talking about the same way that like the GitHub CLI works, right? So you GitHub auth, type in your name, and it gives you a URL that you have to go to log in. Gives you like a one-time token that you type into which is your, authenticated key. Then you type it into the command line, and then it gets the PAT. So yeah, what we're really talking about is, if I could to rephrase, on Contra, if you go to authenticate, that you can give it the name, but you're going to have to open up a browser or navigate somewhere else that's not controlled by Hub to give it its name and password. That gives you the key that you type back into Contra that can go and get the PAT after that. So it's a slightly longer loop, but that's like the normal OAuth 2 loop.
Yeah. And that's what I'm posing that. What I'm saying is I'm describing how we were doing it wrong, and I'm describing in this environment the way that we should do it right, and the way we almost have to do it right. And so the question would be,
right,
if rather than just going -U-P to Contra, if part of that is in some way dealing with, go to this website and get a token if you don't have one. In fact, the website we would redirect you to would be the hub and say, go to the hub and get a token, or like whatever.
Yeah,
or I guess
that makes sense.
Sorry, I guess in this case, the hub could actually respond with, here's a URL to go to, and it could directly be the well, it would actually be the hub, but yeah. And is that, and I think the ID would have to do the same thing. And the question is, well, like once you get the token, you can keep it for a pretty long time. It's just that would be the way you get it. Or
Right.
you tell users to go into the hub UI ahead of time, the same way you do in GitHub, and just create, access tokens for everybody.
Right. Yeah. The name is you got to log in, and then once you get the login, you can get the access token.
Right.
Right. And so you're just not ever touching passwords in any of the hub stuff. It's always delegating to the OAuth2 provider, OIDC provider, in the OAuth2 workflow. So it's pretty standard. It's more difficult to think of it that way, and it makes the test cases a little bit more tricky because you're running the command and you do this thing, and now it tells you what URL to go to, and you have to launch a separate tool to do that. So, in theory, you could use curl and type it in that way and get a thing back. But yeah, it can't and shouldn't go through Contra. It should be a second out of band comms there. Yeah, I don't consider that surprising. Just it's a different but standard way of doing things for CLI, or at least I've seen it in a couple of different places. That's how it goes.
Yeah, no, it makes sense to me. All right, we should probably put a pin in it there. But if we want to do further discussion on that after, it might be good to call out on that enhancement proposal that we can have some more commentary there. But I think that makes sense to me. I don't find that super surprising. I think people will be able to figure it out, hopefully. Yeah, we'll probably should talk more about it afterwards. Cool. All right. I think that was the only demo we have for the day. Dylan, you wanted to chat about roadmap?
Yeah. Well, so we set enhancement freeze for today. I just wrote a note on here that well, why can we just pull up if you go down, just pull up that link that I have below, or I can share my screen if you want. It's up to you.
Yeah. Feel free to drive if you want. That's fine.
Let me figure out how to share the right window. So, yeah, I think we kind of last community meeting, we're getting alignment as to what was going to 10. I wanted to make sure we agree on this list, and then I know enhancement freezes today. I think for the most part, all of these enhancements are in pretty good shape with some approvals, but there is some people that have been out, and we just need to get some reviews and some updates to the enhancements. So I thought at a minimum, because today's enhancement freeze, can we agree on the list of enhancements that we're going to include in 0.10? Then let's agree on a date for future freeze, because this was tentative last time. Let's start with the closed ones, because the merged ones, because those are definitely accepted, which this work's actually already starting. So the Contra refactor that Emily is working on, Wanma did a refactor of the generic provider into their own specific providers for Golang, Node.js, and Python. So that work's already in flight. So definitely needs to be included in 0.10. We have Jonah's enhancement for the Analyzer MCP server. We discussed this 3 weeks ago, so I think everyone's okay with this. GitHub's not loading the number of approvals, but any thumbs down? I guess let's just use that. If there's any thumbs down or thumbs ups to tell me if we're including this to 0.10, that would be helpful. So Analyzer MCP server, thumbs up, thumbs down. I'm gonna give my own thumbs up. Cool, thank you. Cool. The stuff that Jeff just shared with Jeff, can we rename this? I think this is expanded a little bit more, like internal auth. Can we maybe say this is something more specifically? We're talking about
make hub an OIDC provider.
Deprecate key cloak integration and make hub and implement OIDC. I don't know. OIDC provider.
Yeah, whatever you want to put it.
Thanks. OIDC provided.
You worded there's another hub.
I don't know. Yeah, good point. All right, whatever. Cool. GitHub is stalling around for me right now.
No, I know.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll come back to this. This is the work on the UI for that same work. So I think this is a no-brainer. Thumbs up. We are migrating the Konveyor UI to Pattern Play 6. Again, I think this work's actually in flight. So this is a big thumbs up for me. If there's no thumbs down, I'm going to call it good. This is the work that Savitha talked about 3 weeks ago. I think you mentioned this 3 weeks ago, right, Savitha? I'm not making that up. So this is an MCP.
This is not an MCP. This is purely skill-based right now.
Oh, awesome. Okay.
Yeah. And it's going to take migration guide as the input for now. And then like probably I'll expand it to change logs and whatnot. So basically just the background is that this will take a migration guide, generate the rules, and then it'll also generate test data to do like sanity check kind of testing, and then like save it to the output folder where we want. That's about it for now. And then like the human has to go and verify. And they can create PR with wherever the provider rule sets are. One other thing is that it also had some labels, which I really like. It says like it's generated by this AI rule gen skill, and then it's if it's tested or not, it adds that data unverified, verified, that gives a signal to the reviewer that they can pay more attention, and then like if that rule is actually verified or not. So it's there. So we can expose this later and then have some buttons or whatever. Whenever someone verifies it, they can just switch the label. So that is the addition that I made since we talked about it
Awesome.
3 weeks ago, and then I removed all the MCP related things. We can extend it if we need it, but it's purely skill based right now.
Okay. Awesome. Thumbs up for me, because I think this is going to be really helpful. So I guess so agent driven migrations. David shared some of this work.
Misclick.
3 weeks ago. This is the work to move Kai into an agent-driven approach. This includes deprecating the internal agent that we built with something off the shelf and breaking out our actual migration logic into a set of skills and tools to be used by the agent. The scope of this, I would like to leave a little open-ended. I think we agree on what the minimum requirements are to accomplish this goal, but I think we're also trying to prototype how we can actually pull the agent-driven migration into other parts of Konveyor that's not just the IDE. So I know that we want to do this for the IDE. Potentially, we want to find a way to expose this in other areas, either from the CLI, from the UI. Definitely don't see UI work being done for this in 0.10. But at least proving that it's possible, and then starting to build that story for like 0.11, I think would be really cool. So, anyways,
yeah. I think the only like UI built on top of it will be the integration in the editor extension. So that'll be the place to like test it, and then in future ones we can pull it out and write additional other front ends for it.
Yeah, exactly.
And
then
one for me.
Thumbs up. Cool. Last one is I apologize, Fabian. I actually haven't read this yet. You asked me to do this yesterday. Okay, your thumbs down yourself.
After talking with some people, I think there's a lot of questions about if this goes far enough or if it is exactly. I think there's been agreement that something about this needs to happen, and like we've talked before about how there needs to be a place where like the review mechanism for proposed hints and things like that can be implemented, even if it's just like for security reasons to prevent prompt injection and things like that. So I think that there parts of this have to happen, but there's been a lot of conversation about where it should happen and how it should happen, and I don't think those will be resolved like in the next week probably. So my personal thing is it probably makes sense to continue working on this enhancement, maybe implement small pieces of it throughout like the implementation phase, but I'm not confident in like the current design as is.
Okay. Then let's leave it up and I'll just take the milestone off.
Yeah.
Cool. So everyone good with this list? Okay. So let's talk feature freeze date. I set this for June 5th. I personally feel like this is achievable, but I guess I'm just opening for discussion if this is too aggressive, too lazy. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Let's see. Are any of the proposals dependent on the other proposals? That's the only thing I could see being an issue. I know a lot of our IDE work integrating the external tools is dependent on the personal access token implementation being available in the hub. Because those tools don't integrate with our current auth system the way they will with personal access tokens. But I think that should go in cleanly. Oh, and it's also dependent. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, all of the IDE stuff, the AI assisted rules generation stuff is going to be somewhat dependent on both the MCP server and the OIDC provider being in. So that's the only, I don't think that'll be a big issue, but if either of those pieces get delayed or there are like issues with it, then it will necessarily delay us as well. And so
it looked like it's working. So I don't
yeah. I mean, the OIDC part I'm not super worried about. The MCP server is maybe more risky.
Okay.
I don't actually think it's going to be an issue. I'm just calling that out because there are those dependencies there. I can't say confidently, like if nothing is delayed, then I'm confident that it is. If other things are taking longer to get in, it might delay some of the AI assisted or AI agent driven migrations. There we go. Agent driven migrations work.
Okay. Noted.
I think one thing to ask is, like the enhancement makes the assumption that the UI will add pages for managing users and roles, and that's and perhaps obtaining an access token, a person, PAT. So I don't know like how that fits into the schedule, and I think from a feature standpoint, like there's a bit of this that feels a little bit tight with 6 weeks, but
on the UI side, is that the concern?
just putting everything together, the operator work has to be done, and I think for the most part, like you would think 6 weeks is enough time to do it. It's probably okay. Just making sure we're understanding the whole scope of it and testing. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
I think one thing that should be considered is when we do this work, how are we going to integrate it into our test frameworks so that we have full coverage of whatever we end up doing here. I think for the OIDC provider stuff in particular, right, I don't think we have anything today that will do that. We have the ability to create, I think, a hub with auth setup. Just something to consider.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm going to even restate that. Like, again, the expectation is with feature freeze, we are contributing a standard set of tests that covers the feature, right? So in this case, just to pick an example, like, yeah, I think we would want to add something to concur that reruns that can execute all the analysis tests with the hub with auth on, right? And then for the agent driven bit, getting the API key part tested.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it has to be in concur, but I think you need to make sure that like all of the integrators can still talk to the hub once you do this. So that would be like Kai and Contra and everything else still is able to authenticate, blah, blah, blah. Like however you end up doing that piece is the key. I don't know if that necessarily needs to be in concur because like I don't think it's necessarily about analysis results.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, sure. Makes sense.
Eleni?
Eleni?
Yeah, hi. Wanted also to mention that we have potentially embedding grind commands into Contra, which is still needs to be discussed next week, but also something to consider.
Is that something that you intend to fit into the O.10 timeline or beyond that?
Oh, that 10.
Is so. Okay, if we need to include that, then maybe setting this date for June 5th is a little aggressive.
Well, this hasn't been closed yet and still under discussion, so might be too soon. But but
well, I
just a
actually,
heads up.
yeah, no, thank you. Okay, maybe we can take that offline and figure out where this fits in, because I can see this also going in parallel and not necessarily need to block O10 if we want to keep moving forward with these things to cut a release.
Sure, definitely.
Okay, yeah, thank you. All right, I'm gonna keep June 5th then, because no one said no, and that's gonna. We can always change it in 3 weeks when we meet again if we feel like this is not remotely possible. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's fine to plan for that date, and then we can reassess. And if something is going off track, we can push it. But better than to push it preemptively before anything's gone wrong.
Cool. And I will get a PR up to the release roadmap. I'll take this, do the normal bug fix cycle and GA date, and send that out on Slack.
Awesome. Okay, cool. I think that brings us pretty much to the end of the meeting. I don't think anyone said anything they would like for open discussion. I guess I'll give everyone 30 seconds now if anyone wants to bring something up. I'll just remain silent awkwardly.
I did want to call out just on the agent migration bit. Hopefully, I would hope by the next meeting we can show off just some prototyping that we're doing of like what this actually looks like in practice. So I just want to kind of call out that for the sprint before the next meeting, while we're also working on O10 feature implementation, I kind of mentioned this on this agent-driven migration enhancement. Like the scope of this that we're committing to O10 is different than I think where we're actually trying to go play with a prototype and proof of concept for it. So that's also going to be happening in the sprint. Hopefully we can share some more next meeting.
Okay.
Anyways, that's it.
Awesome. Anything else from anybody?
Cool. Thanks, everyone. Good demo, Jeff.
There's
Thanks.
one last thing we need to do, which is pick the next meeting host.
Oh, nice. You really weaseled out of that one quick, huh?
It's on the agenda. What can I do? I'm just here to run the meeting, man.
Okay, volunteer. And Fabian, thanks for doing it this week.
Yeah, no problem. Eleni, your hand is up. Is that because you're volunteering, or is that from before?
I think it's from before.
From before.
Too
I
late.
can do it.
Okay, thanks, David.
Boy. Lost. I was going to mute myself and wait as long as we needed to.
I'll be pretty much gone for the next few weeks on vacation, so I'd be a bad choice. All right, excellent. Okay, that is everything on the agenda. Thank you everybody for joining, and we'll catch you next time.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.